Hey yo! Welcome to another episode of That Wrestling Show, the podcast where all pro wrestling matters. I am your host, Bill Yankovi, and this is a bit of a sad week in the world of wrestling as we lost the great Scott Hall. Going to talk about his career and life and what big influence he had on professional wrestling, much more than his time in the NWO, because believe me, he did a lot of things in professional wrestling that should be given its just due. I want to start off with news, and it's kind of, besides Scott Hall and his passing, this week really wasn't much of a week of news except for one thing that I will talk about in a little bit. But I do want to mention a couple of things. WrestleMania 38 will be playing in movie theaters this year. It will be playing via Fathom Events. They announced today that each night of WrestleMania will air in theaters across the United States. I think this is because of the success of AEW and how they have shown pay-per-views in movie theaters as of late. And, it's kind of I think it would be a cool experience to watch a pay-per-view at a movie theater, kind of be like, old school closed circuit, the way they used to do it back in the day. And this is kind of a cool way to watch WrestleMania, and obviously WWE is going to be getting some money out of this. So if you don't have Peacock and you don't have tickets to WrestleMania and you don't want to pay the ridiculous amount of money for pay-per-view, go to your local movie theater. See if they are going to carry both nights of WrestleMania 38. Speaking of WrestleMania 38, a new match added to the card over the past week. The SmackDown Tag Team titles will be defended as the Usos defend against Shinsuke Nakamura and Rick Boogs. As I'm looking at this, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7... 8, 9, 10 matches on the card for WrestleMania 38, and obviously they're going to split them into two nights, so half will be on Saturday, half will be on Sunday. I would not be surprised if we get a few more matches added between now and the time of April the 2nd and April the 3rd, which is only 2 weeks away. So in 2 weeks, I will be doing my big WrestleMania preview show where, I'm going to make it a little different this year. I have an idea in my head. You'll just have to wait to see what it is. Okay, to Japan, where Tokyo Sports reported that New Japan and All Japan Pro Wrestling will be having a joint card on April the 16th to celebrate the 60th anniversary of Korakuen Hall. Now, the main event, as of right now, is scheduled to be Hiroshi Tanahashi teaming with Kento Miyahara against Sanada and Jake Lee. The reason I say as of this moment is because Sanada yesterday suffered an injury in a match against Will Ospreay with a fractured orbital bone. Remains to be seen if Sanada will be able to compete on April the 16th. The rest of the card for this event: Ryo Inoue against Kosi Fujita, Toru Yano and Tajiri against Black Menso Rei and Yoshinobu Kanemaru, Takeo Omori, Ryohei Oiwa, and Yuto Nakashima against Yoshitatsu, Ryosuke Taguchi, and Master Wato. Yuma Aoyagi, Atsuki Aoyagi, Toji Makabe, and Tomoaki Hanma against Tetsuya Naito, Bushi, Shingo, and Hiromu. And Suwama, Shotaro Ashino, and Dan Tamura will face Hiroki Goto, Yoshihashi, and Yo. And that is the card for April the 16th, the 60th anniversary of Kirakan Hall, one of the most famous arenas, not only in all of Japan, but in the entire wrestling world. Alright, so this past weekend, the International Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame announced their second class for 2022, and I have the list here as soon as I pull it up. And this is a pretty good list. Now, last year, they had their first class, which is a really big class. I mean, you had Hogan, Flair, Fez, San Martino. So this will take place in the last weekend of August, with the induction ceremony being on Saturday, August the 27th. And this will be taking place at the Desmond Hotel in Albany, New York. So, with that said, here is the class of 2022 for the International Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. Fred Bell, Tom Jenkins, Alex Aberg, Tom Cannon, Jim Londas, Joe Stetcher, Carl Gotch, Billy Robinson, Riki Choshu, Genichiro Tenryu, Mildred Burke, Dory Funk Jr., and Stone Cold Steve Austin. That is the class of 2022 for the International Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame. Ticket, hotel, and sponsorship information are available for that weekend. You can go to their website at prowrestlinghall.org/induction. It has been confirmed by the Hall of Fame that Dory Funk Jr. will be attending the ceremony this year. So if you want a chance to see the legendary Dory Funk Jr., this is a pretty good chance to go check him out. One of the true legends of pro wrestling. His brother Terry was inducted in the first class last year, so it's kind of fitting that, Dory gets in the second one. And also another thing to point out with this piece of news is Mildred Burke will be the first female wrestler to be inducted into the International Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. Pretty good class. You've got a bunch of former world champions, legends, from every era just about, that is getting inducted into the Hall of Fame, the International Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. So congratulations to everyone. Again, that is Saturday, August 27th at the Desmond Hotel in Albany, New York, for the second induction ceremony for that Hall of Fame. And I guess that's going to be a good transition to talk about the WWE Hall of Fame. And this week, it was announced that Charmelle is getting inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. Alright, so there's a lot I want to say about this without trying to come off as someone who, seems kind of ticked off about this. Here's the thing. If they had done it as, like King Booker and Queen Charmelle, I'd be alright with it. I really would be alright with it. And I understand, she was in wrestling for a long time. She was in WCW. She was there towards the end, and that's where she met Booker, and, they got married, and they had their kids. But of all the people that you have, or you could have to go in to the WWE Hall of Fame, Charmelle? Again, Nothing against her personally. Nothing against her personally. I think she's a nice person. I think, she does good for her kids, for her family. But it's like, of all the people you could have inducted, of all the people, you pick Charmelle? Again, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm trying not to be mean. I'm trying to stay as positive as I can. But Charmelle? I mean, I was talking with a few people. She has broken the old line of, are you, like, if you are better than Coco Beware, you deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, the WWE Hall of Fame, which was the joke for years, which I never really got, because I thought Coco Beware was good, and then you see some of his early stuff in WWE, and it's like, dang, he's real good. So I guess if you're one of those people who, and there are a lot of people that don't believe the WWE Hall of Fame is a real Hall of Fame. I don't really think it is either. Then Charmelle is the new line. She is the new standard of, if you are better than Charmelle, you're going to go in the Hall of Fame. She's going to get inducted by her husband, Booker T, which makes sense. And, I was thinking, for a while, my God, this could be one of the greatest classes in the history of the Hall of Fame, of the WWE Hall of Fame. And it seemed like they were going in the right track. And then Charmelle has announced that she's going in. Again, nothing against her. I have nothing against Charmelle. But this is kind of a head scratcher. This is just a real head scratcher. That's all I'm going to say, and I'm going to say it respectfully, that this is just a head scratcher. I don't know why. I just don't know. That's all I'm going to say, and that's as far as I'm going to go. Someone that is in the WWE Hall of Fame is Scott Hall. He's a two-time WWE Hall of Famer, went in 2014. You can make the argument, maybe the best class of all time for the WWE Hall of Fame, and then was inducted in 2020, but did the actual induction last year as part of the NWO. Scott Hall passed away this past Monday at the age of 63 after having a hip replacement surgery. They found a blood clot, which led to 3 heart attacks, and he went into a coma, and they put him on life support, and they took him off on Monday, and sadly passed away on Monday at the age of 63 years old. Scott Hall's first real big opportunity came in the AWA, where they teamed him up with a young Kurt Hennig, and they ended up becoming the AWA World Tag Team Champions in 1986. And they were champions for quite a long time. I want to say most of 86, until they did lose the tag team titles. So after his run in the AWA, he did go into WCW. He did wrestle in WCW in 89. And there he was just kind of getting his feet wet. There really wasn't much to mention. I mean, he did wrestle at the Great American Bash that year in a battle royal, but that's really about it. And then he would come back after spending time all over the world. He would come back in 1991, where he would be the Diamond Stud, and he was Diamond Dallas Page's go-to guy. And he had a decent run. He wrestled on many pay-per-views. Maybe the 2 most notable for him was the Great American Bash of 91, where he defeated the Z-Man. And then he was in the infamous Chamber of Horrors match at Halloween Havoc 1991, and that was one of the big build matches going into that show. So you could say that was Scott Hall's first big pay-per-view match, was that Chamber of Horrors match. He would eventually leave in 1992, and that is where things turn for Scott Hall, as he would become Razor Ramon. We all know the story by now, but I'll say it anyway. Basically, the inspiration for the character Razor Ramon is from the movie Scarface with Al Pacino. And something to think about with Razor Ramon, with Scott Hall. He has the vignettes. He does his jobber matches. But if you really think about it, his first real big feud in WWF is with Randy Savage. And basically, for all intents and purposes, Razor Ramon cost Randy Savage the WWF title in 1992, losing to Ric Flair. So that is Razor's first big feud, is with Randy Savage, who is in this title run or about to lose the title, and he gets involved in it. And of course that leads to the Survivor Series, which originally was the main event. I think it, depending on how you look at it, it might have still been the main event. Again, depending on how you look at it. Then you get to the Royal Rumble, and Razor's in a world title match against Bret Hart. You know, he's in a big match at the Royal Rumble. Obviously, he loses there, but it didn't stop his momentum. You get to WrestleMania 9. He beats Bob Backlund in a quick match. And then, what might have been the big momentum changer for Scott Hall's career at this point in time is the famous May 17, 1993 episode of Monday Night Raw, where Razor Ramon wrestles this jobber. He's gone Lightning Kid, Thunder Kid, all these different names. So this week, he goes as the Kid. The Kid hits a moonsault. 1, 2, 3. Razor Ramon loses to the Kid. And that is how the 1, 2, 3 Kid name began. And it's because of this that 1, 2, 3 Kid's career takes off. And for the better, Razor's career takes off as well, because he eventually becomes a babyface. He becomes a good guy. And in the fall of 1993, he wins the Intercontinental title, beating Rick Martel after they were the final two people in a battle royal. And after that, he's off. You know, he carries the Intercontinental title division for a long time. The famous match at WrestleMania 10 with Shawn Michaels. He has a feud with Diesel, Jeff Jarrett, Goldust, you know, to name a few. And Razor's a big figure. He's a big part of not only the Intercontinental division, but he's also a big picture, you know, a big star in the WWF. Then you go to the end of his run. His last pay-per-view match is at an In Your House, where he loses to Vader. That's his last WWF pay-per-view match for a while. Then you have the curtain call. And I'll be honest, you know, I didn't know this happened. I was like 10 years old. 10 years old. No idea what the hell this was. And it wasn't until years later that you hear about it, and he's going to WCW. So he goes to WCW, and this launches, basically, what would become the NWO faction and the NWO angle. And Scott Hall is the catalyst. He is the one that starts it all. Because he comes over on a Monday Nitro, and he just hops the rail, gets in the ring, and he's like, "You know who I am, but you don't know why I'm here." And, it just keeps going and going. You get Nash, and then you get to Bash at the Beach, and the mystery partner ends up being Hogan, and then boom, they're off and running. And Scott Hall's a big factor. He's a big part of the success of the NWO. He would go on to win the WCW tag titles at Halloween Havoc that year with Kevin Nash, and they would hold those titles for almost a full calendar year. He would achieve other, big things. He won World War III. He won the WCW United States title. He was very successful. But at the same time, this is kind of where the situation with alcohol comes into play. And, it became a big problem. And eventually, Scott Hall left WCW. He had a brief run at ECW, and then went to New Japan for a brief time, and then he would come back to WWF in 2002 with Hall and Nash. They would, it's the NWO. Hall ends up wrestling Austin at WrestleMania. And the story with that match, for those that have never heard the story, Nash was the backup. If Hall could not go for WrestleMania, Nash was the backup for that match. That's why Nash was in his gear. But Hall went through it, did the match, and gave us one of the best stunners of all time from that match. So Scott Hall did compete at a WrestleMania again. Then you had the plane ride from hell, which has been talked about, and then he's gone after that. And then he joins a new promotion, a brand new promotion called TNA. And he is on the first TNA pay-per-view, which Jim Boy Star and I, we did the gauntlet for the gold match on Eliminated, a Royal Rumble podcast, which you guys can check out. And Scott Hall has appearances, from the beginning for a while, really, until about 07, 08. And, then he takes time off, then he comes back, and he, it's such a weird story because it's like he would be good, would be clean, then he'd fall back, and he would just be, would just be in a bad situation. So Scott Hall eventually got help from Diamond Dallas Page, got clean, got sober, no more drugs, no more alcohol, gets inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2014. Like I said, maybe the best class, maybe the best class the WWE's ever had. And I want to say his last appearance on WWE television was at WrestleMania last year when the NWO got inducted. There's so many things we could talk about with Scott Hall. They did a 30 for 30, or not a 30 for 30, but ESPN did a story on Scott Hall like 10 years ago. And it's so, I remember watching it because the reporters are like, oh, well, today's wrestlers, all they do is they go and they play video games. But back in the day, these wrestlers, they would, go out, drink beer, take drugs, blah, 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 blah. And that kind of became a big thing there. But, just think about it. Scott Hall, such a big role he played in the history of wrestling. Such a big role. I mean, he and Shawn have the first televised ladder match in WWF history at WrestleMania 12 or at WrestleMania 10. Yes, Bret and Shawn did it first, but that was never televised. Razor and Shawn had the first televised ladder match. And then, just the way he talked and his moves and all that, it just, it's kind of, he is gimmicked. Not gimmicked, but, he kind of has tributes paid to him every time people come out. And, that's kind of the legacy of Scott Hall. It really is. And I want to go through his accomplishments real quick. I did mention some, but I want to go through the whole list. As I mentioned, co-holder of the AWA tag team titles with Curt Hennig, held the DDT Iron Man heavy metalweight title. That's a title in Japan. Basically, it's the original 24/7 title, if you want to look at it that way. Co-holder of the TNA World Tag Team titles, USWA Unified World Champion, WCW World Television Champion, United States Champion, 7-time co-holder of the WCW Tag Team titles, won World War III in 1997, held the WWC Caribbean Heavyweight title and Universal Heavyweight title, 4-time Intercontinental Champion, was the first person to do that, the first person to accomplish that feat, and 2-time WWE Hall of Famer, Match of the Year 1994, just a big deal, big star, truly going to be missed. The influence, however, of Scott Hall on the business of pro wrestling is going to be felt basically forever, and he is one of the reasons why he's going to have, this label of how big of an influencer he really was. My thoughts go out to his kids, his friends, his family. We truly lost an innovator and one of the best of the last 25, 30 years in the business. Scott Hall passing away on Monday at the age of 63. And that is going to do it for this week's show. Going to give you guys the quick plugs. You guys can follow the show on Twitter, Wrestling Show 11. Join the Facebook, or check us out on Instagram, That Wrestling Show. If you got any questions or comments, email me, wrestlingman@thatwrestlingshow.com. And don't forget to join our Facebook group, That Wrestling Show fan group. That's all you got to do. Type it in, and you're right there. If you can't find it, it's okay. I put a link in the description of each and every episode. Couple of quick plugs. Check out the DK and Bill Wrestling Podcast. It's a big two-parter where we give our rankings of the 10 best WrestleMania matches from WrestleMania 1 through 20 and 21 through 37. So check that out on the DK and Bill Wrestling Podcast. And also check out Sharks Pond, a South Park podcast where I watch, discuss, and review each and every South Park episode. This week, I review the Season 15 episode, Royal Pudding. That is this week on Sharks Pond, a South Park podcast. I do have a Scott Hall story before I wrap it up. 2018, I'm working a wrestling convention in Joppa, Maryland, Maryland Championship Wrestling. Scott Hall is one of the featured guys there. He's one of the featured people. And, this is a big opportunity. I'm going to get Scott Hall. So I have this magazine, and he signs it, Razor Ramon. Then we get our picture taken. And, he thanks, I thank him, and he's like, thank you for being a fan. Thank you for your support. And one of my best friends is there. She took the picture. And she thanks her for putting up with me watching wrestling, which I thought was kind of cool, kind of a funny, little thing. But, he is right. We should thank the people that love us, that deal with us watching wrestling, because, we watch it. We love it. And they are part of the ride with us. And that's kind of the message that I kind of take. So, I want to end the show by saying Scott Hall's famous words from his WWE Hall of Fame speech in 2014. Hard work pays off. Dreams come true. Bad times don't last. But bad guys do.